Hello, welcome to the webinar. We're going to take a few minutes to let people sign in before we get started. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another installment of VolunteerMatch Solutions Best Practice Network webinar. We're going to wait a few more minutes to let other attendees join the call before we get started, so hang in there and we'll get started in a moment. Hello, welcome everyone to VolunteerMatch's Best Practice Network webinar. I am very excited today to have John Anthony Meza from Corporate Voices on the call to discuss creating and sustaining successful business and community partnerships. So before we get started, I'd like to do our usual audio test with the audience. If you can hear me on the call and you can see the screen with John Anthony's title and photo and logo, please type into your chat box or your question box on the side panel so I can know that everyone's in attendance. Oh, looks like you can hear me. Wonderful. All good. Great. So we have some awesome turnout today. I'm very excited to have John Anthony on the call. For those of you listening, we are recording the webinar, so if you need to drop off or your colleagues weren't able to make it, there will be a recorded version on the VolunteerMatch YouTube channel. And I'll also be sending out a printed PDF of the presentation. Also, for those on the call, we will be tweeting about the conversation, so you can follow at VM_solutions with the hashtag BPN_Meza, and that is a great location to talk about what we're discussing on the presentation, and enter in questions, and we'll respond accordingly. So without further ado, I'm quickly going to get my slides in order. I would like to introduce John Anthony Meza from Corporate Voices. John Anthony, are you on the call?
Yes, I am. Thank you so much, Megan. Well, welcome to everybody. I hopefully and probably know many of you either through the work that I had previously done at KPMG and our CSR work, or through our work here at Corporate Voices. And I know many of you utilize volunteers in the education and youth space, and to provide a number of volunteers into that space. And so that really is where I'm here today. So part of my today's objectives are going to be understanding workforce readiness issues and how they are affecting employers' perspectives on their future workforce. The key thing is finding out how business and community partnerships can strengthen the education pipeline and ensure all of us working with youth in our communities are ready for college, work, and life. And then finally, learn how we can start to build business community partnership engagement strategies with the tools that we have developed. So quickly about Corporate Voices. Now, I was at KPMG running our CSR work and our youth and education and workforce readiness work for the last decade, and I just recently joined Corporate Voices. I am overseeing that work here at Corporate Voices, and I previously was on the board of directors. We are a business membership organization with more than 50 best practice corporate partners. We believe business and working families and communities succeed when individuals of all ages and socioeconomic levels prosper, and the fact that the competitiveness of the American business is tied to the quality of the skilled workforce. And most importantly today, the future prosperity in the economy is the incoming workforce. So we play a unique role in shaping conversations between public and corporate policy issues involving working families, and provide a unique voice where leading and best practice employers have a forum to improve the lives of working families and strengthen the nation's economy and the vitality of communities. And this is in the areas of work and family balance, workplace flexibility, family economic stability in community, and today, most importantly, workforce readiness. And if we look at the next slide, as we look at how we sort of work, and Megan, if you want to change to the next slide. Yeah. So we believe in utilizing the strengths of all the corporate divisions. We often bring together HR, diversity, CSR, government affairs, and others within the same organization to discuss issues that are important to them. And really, this kind of interlink really shows how they impact internal discussions and policy within a business, how they impact their clients and their business on the outside, and most importantly, how they impact their community. So how we do it on the next slide is, we do it through policy initiatives, if you want to, identifying business best practices, creating research and tools, and all of this really sort of informs all of our other pieces of work. And so they really sort of leverage and build off of each other. And so to really get to the nitty-gritty, I want to get to sort of like the workforce readiness pipeline on the next slide. Our workforce readiness initiatives are dedicated to ensuring that all employees receive the supports they need to be successful across the pipeline, really from cradle, early childhood, to career and post-secondary education and lifelong learning. We're currently focused in 3 areas: enterprising pathways to work, which is really utilizing an untapped talent of disconnected youth to work. And I know many of the community-based organizations online today are working with this population of kids, either through after school, with working on them as they are going through their K-12 experience, or after they've left and they've not done that work, or business is working with them on how to really engage and support that level of work. The Learn and Earn work, which is on our post-secondary education completion, and this is really where a key piece of this work really falls to business talent development area within a business. And then finally, our Ready by 21 work, which is our work with community-based organizations, educational institutions, and community, and how business can work on that area in youth and education. All of us know how staggering the education and workforce readiness problems are when 1/3 of our kids are not graduating high school in time. And in some large urban areas, only about half of the students graduate on time. And approximately 1/2 of graduates are considered to be academically prepared for post-secondary education, or more so for career. And so we see that there's definitely a lacking that we all know about, that we're all sort of trying to strive. So the young people today, the workforces tomorrow, are not prepared to work. And from the business perspective, this crisis will threaten our nation's ability to compete rapidly in the changing and more competitive global economy. and really in helping sustain and build on our slow economic recovery that we're currently doing. And some of this has really come to the forefront through our workforce readiness research that we have on the next slide. The second one there, business leadership supporting the youth development pipeline, really demonstrates a tremendous amount of what businesses have done in the youth space, working with community-based organizations, which is, I think, a key one. And we have a new one coming out of why companies invest in grow your own talent development models that really touch on some of the areas of how a lot of the grow your own models of working with this youth population started within CSR and the volunteerism and community work, and has been moved into the business because they saw it as such a business case. So we produce a significant amount of research to look deeper into a broad range of workforce readiness issues affecting employers and the community. This research has found that employers are concerned with the level of preparedness of the entry-level workers. As we know, a lot of these kids are going to be coming in at low wage if they're just coming out of high school and they're not going on to post-secondary education. However, the trainings that are provided are not beneficial as they could. So they're looking to community partners, nonprofits, and community colleges for partnerships to really help prepare prepare this generation of workers. What we've learned is that business and community leaders individually cannot solve this problem alone. Business spends billions of dollars on training, and a lot of that is on sort of this remedial training to get people to a place where they can work. And I know community-based organizations and philanthropy and a lot of work has been done to make sure this work is prepared, but so often we do this individually, and we need to be looking at this together. A lot of this research, I think, and that's throughout this work, is you can always find this work on corporatevoices.org, and there's a tremendous amount of resources for both community-based organizations and businesses. As we look to the next slide on the ill to well prepared, according to some of our research on the Are They Ready to Work, employers are frustrated with the overall preparedness of the new entrants in the workforce. And we just actually did a recent poll, and we found that the general populace is also thinking that that's basically the case. We're expecting young people to arrive with a core set of business knowledge and abilities, and mainly the 3 R's, the reading, writing, arithmetic, are still fundamental, but applied skills such as professionalism, communication, teamwork, critical thinking, these are essential for success in work. And this is why the work in the K through 12 space that so many of us do is so key. Building on that research, we looked at the same skills employers are looking for in the workforce in the ill to well-prepared workforce, and saw that these same skills are needed to have success in post-secondary education. And that's why graduation, the completion initiatives, and what is being taught at the high school level, and so many of us, our work in that space is again, so important. So many of us are doing a lot of this work in youth and education, and the steps to evaluate who to engage, and our next steps in building sort of partnerships between business and community organizations is so key. So first off, we're going to go to a polling question as we delve into some of our tools a little bit more deeply.
Great. So I'm going to post this poll, and we'll get some audience feedback. So the question is, what do you feel are the greatest benefits of participating in a business community partnership? So we've selected a few options. So the poll should be open, and you can select which one you feel is the greatest benefit. And then I will close, and we'll show results after we get a few more people.
Great.
Yeah.
Well, and while people are voting, we found through some of our surveys of business leaders that 97% feel that workforce readiness is a critical business imperative. And these leaders are looking to and currently partnering with community organizations to help build the support of these workforce readiness skills. And so I think that really sort of goes why this question, I think, is very key.
Okay. All right, I'm going to close that and share the results on the screen. Are you seeing those, John Anthony?
Yeah, this is great, and I think we sort of see it's a bit partial. I think visibility is a key one here, but expertise is another. But it really is, I think, all of these. And so as we go to the next slide of why pursue public and business partnerships, and I'll let you get there. Knowledge. As partners, business can provide knowledge, informing information on critical skills that they feel young people need. Planning and organizational expertise. Relationships and credibility can be leveraged in recruiting other leaders to the cause. Access to resources, volunteers, facilities, equipment, or other in-kind resources. And finally, sort of organizational culture. Businesses are entrepreneurial, emphasize action that's useful when undertaking a lot of these new ventures. Now, on the other side, businesses are motivated to partner with business for reputation. This goes to that visibility piece that was so high, is that oftentimes you can use community partners for building your reputation from an unbiased third party. There's community connections, introduction to city leaders, again, sort of from a visibility perspective, that can assist business in future endeavors through local legislative support. It also provides access to new geographic and demographic markets that can have really a direct effect on business revenue. They really look to community organizations because you are experts in the issues, in-depth experience and knowledge of a particular issue area, such as education. They also have employees where community organizations provide volunteer opportunities, as we all know, be connected to VolunteerMatch. Volunteering can increase motivation, wellness, service professional development opportunities, and it could potentially be a platform for recruiting additional employees. I know we use that in my old employer of the work that we do in community on campus. As we did campus recruiting, it does a lot for diversity and inclusion, playing a role in community engagement through the community organizations who we provide funds and services to, and finally, strategizing their community work to make sure it gets the root cause of problems in community where the company and its employees are located, so from a social welfare perspective. Now, as we look at the next slide, we know that there are, of course, strong benefits that come, but they also come with hard work and challenges. Oftentimes, leaders struggle with the time spent having similar conversations with different individuals within the same organization, or more so having similar conversations with multiple organizations across the community. We often have different ways of speaking between community-based organizations and business, and it's important to speak clearly and speak up if something is not very clear. Transparency is key. Partners who do not provide them with all the appropriate information regarding partnerships, you need to be upfront and honest with your partners, and this is on both sides. If it takes, and so this goes to the next piece on timing, if it takes a while for something to get processed or through or approval, we want to sort of build those pieces in. Or if, so-and-so is on maternity leave, we want to have that information. I think that kind of thing is key. And there's definitely different schedules for making decisions and finishing projects. So we want to be respectful of the timeline, but we also need to understand that. And so part of that is the transparency and timing. Coordination and knowledge sharing should be at the base of any successful partnership, although it's not always the case. I believe we need to be aware and share with other efforts that are happening in community or within the business. If you are sort of doing some literacy work as well as doing K-12 work and doing some high school work, having your partners know about all the pieces and how they leverage each other really helps them be a much better community partner, and vice versa on the other side. And often between business and community-based organizations, you have different definitions of what measurement means around a particular effective initiative, and finding a balance between qualitative and quantitative measures. But again, sort of from a transparency perspective, having those key discussions around that is, I think, very important, very key. One thing that we'll be able to talk about, and I know this would be great in our Q&A section, is other barriers and really sort of crossing those barriers to those challenges of partnerships, I think would be a great opportunity. So some of the essentials of sustaining partnership on the next slide. Successfully launch and navigating partnerships and community, we need to keep in mind common objectives, the needs of your partners. You want to really have a win-win. And to do that, you want to have clearly defined goals. What are your community partners expecting from you, and what are you expecting from them? Flexibility, I think, is key. Flexibility ensures leaders can deal with issues at hand, focus on the ultimate goals of partnership, and also allows for potential new opportunities to say, oh, what about this area of work? And you may have to look at a new statement of work, or, because you don't want scope creep and so forth, but you really want to say, we've not been working in literacy, for example, but that's a key area, or we've not really touched on STEM, and that's an area we need to look at and sort of be able to sort of have that flexibility. Language and culture, there are definitely differences here, and bridging these gaps is key. I know the folks on the phone, at least on the CSR volunteerism side, have needed to learn how to speak nonprofit or came from nonprofit working in business. And oftentimes folks helping build business partnerships on nonprofits can speak business, and you folks are crucial and key in that translation. So being intimately involved in sort of that process, I think, is absolutely important to ensure that you're using being bilingual. Timing, as I spoke about in the previous slide, and having a point of reevaluation, I think, is a nice place to have a piece. Leadership, who is going to be managing the work, who are the decision makers, who is the signing authority, having those pieces up front. If you are the person sort of doing the work, but the authority to sign off on any different pieces goes up above a couple places, having those discussions early and making sure that the timing of that is also put in place. Finding a balance between measurement and data, and both accurately depict the initiative's success. Both the business and the community-based organization or the educational institution is going to want a successful event, successful initiative, successful program. And having all of that written up ahead of time helps both be able to say, wow, this really has made the impact that we've wanted it to make. And finally, communicating, developing a communication strategy and feedback loop for not only how the work is going, and as well as the successes of the work and what needs to be moved forward. So this is, all of these essentials of sustainable partnership are key on two of the toolkits that we are talking about today. The first is supporting the education pipeline, the business engagement tool for community-based organizations. And just after this, I'll talk about our business to community-based organization tool. But in order to assist business and community leaders in overcoming these challenges, we wrote and partnering with the Ready by 21 National Partnership, United Way Worldwide, Workforce Strategies in creating and supporting an educational tool pipeline series. This first tool, the Business Engagement Tool for Community-Based Organizations, is designed to provide community leaders with lessons on how to identify potential partners, set goals, and manage partnerships. If we look at the sort of the Business Engagement Toolkit on the next slide, we see sort of these four key areas that we see essential for business engagement. Identifying leaders who support your efforts. You have the time, the resources to develop and sustain partnerships. This is where you really need to be realistic, what your organization can accomplish from a community-based organization perspective. So this is really for that side of the house today of you sitting there as a CBO. What is your time frame? We all, now that I'm moved from KPMG to Corporate Voices, I now work for a nonprofit again in my career. And there's potentially a constraint of resources, a timing perspective, what other pieces of work you have. So you want to be realistic about the capacity, what you can't do. And oftentimes we see a opportunity for a great piece of work, but in reality we would really have to ramp something up. And at this time is when you're identifying, during this identification phase is when you can say, we either have the leadership to move in this, or we may want to partner with another CBO that would bring to the table here. So there's a number of things right in this identification place that we really sort of want to play in. and the educate business leaders about the needs in the community. This is, if you have a business case to educate leaders on your issues, on what is important, and why they should support it. The business case should be relevant and concise and specifically connected to your community's challenges. But you should also look at the needs of the particular business. This requires conducting some research before you reach out to an organization to ensure that they are a good match for your partnership. If they've really been focusing on early childhood education and pre-K, and you really have been focusing on STEM in high school, there really is not a strong match. And no matter how much you try to sort of spin it or frame it, you really are not going to have that key connection. So doing that early research, that's also going to potentially provide you with who are some potential partners out in the space. And so I think that's, and sort of building out what that sort of looks like. The next piece is persuading business leaders to become involved. The needs of your organization should be, looked at as opportunities for leaders to reach their goals, these business leaders to reach their goals. Items to consider sort of creating is sort of talking points, a PowerPoint if you've not done that, success stories, brochures and fact sheets, but with a focus on the needs that they would be meeting. So if they're a retail establishment and they're looking for the next generation, that incoming population, what does their philanthropic work and their volunteerism do into that youth pipeline work where they're coming in? Or if they're really wanting to build out and they're an engineering or scientific organization and they're really wanting to engage in STEM and they're really wanting to focus in middle school, what does that work sort of mean back to them in that kind of work? And so that's where you really can then persuade, but understanding it from their perspective to really sort of build those pieces out. And then finally is activating leaders in your efforts. You want to provide simple, clear, actionable requests, something that will be really relevant, doable, and meets the business leaders where they are. If you're talking to somebody at the C-suite, the CEOs, the COOs, the CFOs, the corporate responsibility officers, you want something that is at their level that makes sense. So is it a speaking engagement? Is it an award presentation? Is it something that is leadership where they meet speaking to the mayor about STEM in the community? If it's somebody that is doing the corporate responsibility youth work, what is it that you're looking for them? Are you looking for a potential assistance with programming, assistance with expertise that they can bring to the table? So really looking at who your business leaders are and how you want to activate them and really be at that level that's really sort of doable and meets those leaders where they're at. On the other side, on the business to community, this new toolkit is assisting business leaders in cultivating relationships with community leaders, building the foundations for successful community partnerships, and strategically align business communities to increase their return on investment. We talked a bit earlier about the different sort of silos that we all sort of could work at. And so as we look at the next slide, what we looked at more so at this community engagement toolkit is how do we integrate the various sort of corporate silos, and that's really the focus of this strategy. We have on a business side investing to have the most return, and with crossing these silos, you directly connect your philanthropic efforts to your business needs, which really sort of then helps bridge across these silos. Internal community engagement and philanthropy strategies, leaders have the opportunity to break down the silos within their organizations. So, it's increasing communication between finance, operations, government affairs, human resources, training and development, and strategy and philanthropy. And this is how they impact your community engagement strategy, but also how it has the impact back to how the organization operates on a day-to-day basis. So if you're looking at, to use some of my earlier experiences, sort of looking at that low-wage hourly population because you're needing that population of folks, integrating your work with a community-based organization that is already sort of doing that training and development, that will be providing you a great, potentially trained work-ready or group of potential employees. That takes the opportunity from a talent development department, or the training department, that takes that out of there. They can help put in some of that curriculum to the community-based organization. And so you then have this great sort of partnership of incoming employees, some work that's taken off of the training department, which is, of course, a nice sort of savings there, and you're able to parlay that into the philanthropy piece. And then from an HR and recruiting perspective, you're having people. So looking at how those silos come in, finance would be happy with that. And then the senior executives would be able to go out and speak publicly about how that work is really key and crucial to not only impacting community, but how it does make business sense. And so, and that's sort of the senior executives over to the communications and public relations piece of it, which goes back to our earlier poll around visibility, and that was such a key piece. And one of the pieces that we definitely do here at Corporate Voices is the work around policy, and so having a connection back to your government affairs to be able to have a great, I've had a number of folks while I was at KPMG go and speak on the Hill around our work on youth and education, which is, I think, a wonderful opportunity to have a business voice in policy. We had, Corporate Voices just recently did a Ready by 21 policy briefing, and we had a couple of business leaders come in to speak about why youth is important in the work that they're doing. And I think that was a nice connection to say, this is how policy can then support the work that communities are doing and support the work that business is doing. And so that other final piece of government affairs and public policy, I think, is a nice opportunity. So I want to quickly go through. I wanted to leave some time for definitely some Q&A, but I wanted to open it up to talk about some really nice best practice partnerships. And then the first off, I wanted to start off with AOL and Year Up. We all, of course, know AOL. And for those of you that do not know, Year Up is a great organization. So this CBO business partnership meets the needs of both partners. AOL is always looking for skilled talent, and Year Up is a great organization that gets them vetted, and they have enthusiastic, trained, and diverse interns. Year Up is a one-year intensive training program that provides urban young adults, usually in the just after high school. So you've either completed high school and you've gone nowhere from you've really sort of not really sort of moved into either college, or you've not had the opportunity to, or you're not employed, or maybe you did not even finish high school. But they then provide those students with a combination of technical professional skills, college credits, an educational stipend, and of course corporate internships like the one with AOL. So they provide a 6-month rigorous classroom training that includes the essentials of technical skills, so they really know the work that they're going to be doing, but also a lot of the basic skills requirements that you're going to need to be work ready for any employer. You see some of the kids that come out of Year Up and the professionalism and the speaking opportunities that they have. And I know many of you do very similar type of work of really preparing youth for that work. And then they go into a 6-month internship. So one thing that AOL has created is the Year Up Success Program. And within this partnership, they now tap managers to provide interns with mentoring, training, and feedback. And the interns who provide would be a good match for available openings. And so not only because they now have connected with these managers as mentors, and have had this internship, we see a great number then transition from interns to actually employees. So it really is a win-win for AOL. They get trained employees, and Year Up has a wonderful partner that continues to be very engaged and providing internships for their students. So the partnership has grown over time, and one nice thing, and this is something that, again, it goes back to that transparency piece, as AOL's needs change slightly or grow, they're able to work with Year Up on updating their curriculum during that 6-month of classroom training, so they really can be better prepared to go into AOL or really any other IT organization, because they learn a lot of sort of help desk and these kind of works. And they come out of this with, I think it's 18 college credits, depending here with the AOL partnership with the Northern Virginia Community College. And with that, they're already moving forward and potentially some work around that area. So the AOL Europe partnership is, I think, one that's very key and successful. Another that's a little bit more fleshed out and around the work around post-secondary education is UPS and Metropolitan College, which is on the next slide. And the story here was UPS in Louisville, Kentucky, which is one of the largest distribution networks. As you all well know, if you use UPS, you see how, all the amount of packages that they have. But they were seeing turnover rates over 70% of their employees in Louisville. And so the cost of doing business was just way too much. They were eating through the entire population of Louisville of those that were able to sort of come and work for them. So they were actually considering moving their facility versus growing their facility, which was the next opportunity. And the state and local officials realized what damage would do to their local economy. And so they then partnered with UPS, Jefferson Technical Community College, the University of Louisville, the Commonwealth of Kentucky, and the local government. And they created this thing called Metropolitan College. Now, the Metropolitan College provides eligible Kentucky residents access to tuition-free post-secondary education, provides career and academic planning, financial support services vital to motivating and keeping workers engaged. And those that are employed at UPS are eligible for payment up to 100% of their tuition, including books and and they also do academic bonuses to make sure that the students are to stay involved and engaged. And since 2009, more than 2,500 students have graduated, and the majority of these were first-time college goers. And so we saw this is a completely winning strategy for UPS. They've gained a stable and skilled workforce. Their turnover rates decreased to less than 20%, which in their sort of marketplace, that's almost unheard of. And the city and the region, the state, of course, kept UPS local, and now they have a more educated populace. One of the examples, so we have various sort of one-page cases that we have, and one of these is on this UPS model. And the woman that got her degree because of UPS, working sort of part-time and getting 100% of it covered, is now working at the local Girl Scouts as an employee of the local, I think it was the Girl Scouts, which is a wonderful educating the population. And this became not only a great sort of community-based impact, but it also sort of met a key business need of UPS. And then finally, from a different perspective, we had sort of AOL from an IT perspective, UPS from sort of a sort of an hourly process-based, and then we have Deloitte and their pro bono services, so very much a professional services firm and what they're doing. And the pro bono work is one of the most powerful ways Deloitte supports charitable organizations, strengthens the nonprofit sector, and communicates their values. They believe the most meaningful impact they can have in communities by leveraging their greatest assets, their professional employees, focusing on helping nonprofits deal with some of the issues that challenge their capacity to address social problems. Now, one of the things that is key here is they have, of course, these national impacts, so national organizations that they will help and build and do some of the work that they do, such as strategic planning, consulting on human resource procedures, technical implementation, supply chain recommendations, these other sort of capacity building efforts. And they also then are able to sort of do it at a local basis. So a local Deloitte office in Atlanta would be able to work with a Atlanta-based, community-based organization and really assist them in the work that they're doing on some of this pro bono work. And Deloitte knows that their involvement in the community is good for them too, because it contributes to the healthy environment the business needs to thrive. We spoke earlier about the opportunity for employees to have motivation, wellness, and how that impacts loyalty and retention. They see this such a key piece of the work that they're doing with their employees. So it really is helping to attract, develop, and retain them as they move forward. So, excuse me. On the final slide, before we sort of move into some Q&A, we've got 3 examples of some other tools that we have here. The first one, right under the questions term, is common goals and unique strengths, and it's a nice, simple tool of what education institutions are looking to from business. And so it really has sort of the 5 key things that, as you look at education business partnerships, whether you're working through a middle school, a K-12 education institution, high school, what are these superintendents or what are these educators sort of saying they need from business? And at the same time, if you're a community-based organization, what are the business leaders asking from them? The business engagement stakeholder wheel, which is the green one, is a nice way to look at all the different key connections that you have within your community with business. So you're looking at your board of directors, how to go about looking and researching who to best tap for different pieces of the work. So I think this is a nice other tool from a community perspective that you can utilize to sort of look to see who the stakeholders are that you have to be able to tap into. And then finally, in general, is sort of the preparing youth for success in the workforce, Ready by 21 and Corporate Voices. And really this is like the why business may want to get engaged with Ready by 21 in your local community. Ready by 21 is in about 43 communities across the country with a really deep dive in a number of cities across the southeast. And really nice opportunity, and they really sort of first off look at the audit of what business, community, and nonprofits are doing together in a local place. And so it really helps sort of build and make these key connections. So with that, I'll close, Megan, the formal part and really sort of leave the last sort of 20 minutes or so to see if there's sort of questions and conversation.
Great. Thank you so much, John Anthony. We do have a handful of questions that have come in, and audience members on the line, type in your questions in the question box, and I will pose them to John Anthony. The first one we had, and I'm going to bring us back to the Business Engagement Toolkit slide, and there are a lot of nonprofits on the call, so I think this is a great opportunity to really, pick John Anthony's brain about how to understand the corporate world and make these connections. One of the first questions was, how do you identify business leaders and make that first contact?
Sure. Well, interestingly enough, I think that stakeholder wheel that I mentioned is a key one there. And so I think one of the things that you want to go about doing, and oftentimes what happens is, you've met someone or you've seen someone, and you approach them to sort of say, hey, can you provide me funding because this issue is really important to our organization and the community. And I think you want to sort of take a step back and understand who you are, what you're doing in community, and then why does it matter to this organization, to this business leader. And really sort of frame it from that perspective. So it is going to take a bit of research, but it also going about and sort of looking at all the different stakeholders. So if you have I think an easy one to start with is your board of directors. So you look at your board of directors, and you may have a manager or senior manager, or even associate of a particular organization, having the conversation with them of why they're engaged with your organization, and to help them frame out why you would want to go to their leader or their CSR person or their philanthropic or their foundation sort of makes sort of sense. Doing the background research on that organization's impact in community, so figuring out, so literacy is a key component for them, and so they really sort of want to build out that piece of literacy. How does that resonate to the work that we're doing? So maybe you're doing a lot of middle school work, so you want to say literacy we know is important to you because of these issues, and this is how we're also connected to that piece of work. And so that really sort of then starts doing those key kind of connections. But going through methodically and saying, okay, who do we know on our board of directors? Who do we know that's already engaged from our work on volunteerism? if you've not sort of done a good, if you don't have sort of like a volunteer intake form that knows where people are coming from, that may be an opportunity to sort of do that so you actually know where people are coming from so you can tap them again. If you are having an attorney do filing, which is completely fine work to do, or they're doing intake work or whatever you're having them do, paint, that's, if that's what they want to do and that's what you need most, that's absolutely wonderful. But understanding where they come from so you can actually have conversations with them. And who knows, they could be doing pro bono legal work for you. So that kind of, and that could then lead to further conversation, further discussion. There's a partnership that I use as an example when I was at KPMG. I had known them for about 10 years. We had dabbled in doing some volunteer events, a little bit here, a little bit there. And when we went to establish a much more a literacy-based organization, literacy-based project with our family members, they were one of the first people I turned to because I knew their work, I knew them, and they knew me. And so when I finally had the conversation with them, it was an easy, key connection. But they had done their research, and they did not keep coming to me saying, hey, what about this, what about that, what about this other piece? It was very sort of methodical.
Great, thank you. Another question that came in is asking if this kind of presentation you're giving us applies well to smaller employers and nonprofits, or maybe what kind of adjustments would you make when it's not as big as Deloitte or AOL?
Yes. I think in local community, I think these, some of the big partnerships that, they're kind of what can make some of these sort of big pieces and some of the strong pieces of work that you really want to make happen. And so those are the easy ones, and we have a ton of large nonprofit partners that we work with. Although the amount of work that is done in local communities by mid and small-sized businesses, everybody from having 3 or 4 employees to having, just a couple of hundred employees, I think that's the great opportunity. Going in and having conversations of what they're looking for. I know, for example, a small business in Santa Cruz Valley in California every year now does this entire thing with their less than a dozen employees of doing a whole food drive for this senior service organization, and goes around and provides this organization and provides, I think, over a dozen families of seniors with food. And so that was a great partnership for a small organization like that on something that they cared about, because the leader really sort of cared about senior citizens. And so in having a conversation with them, that's what they figured out, and that's what they were able to be able to leverage. If they would have come in and say, hey, could you provide books to third graders, it may not have resonated. And so, but again, I think understanding those small, mid-sized businesses, and I think you also want to look at, so I think you can look at all of your populations, and I think we have such a range of businesses from those small to 200 to 300 employees to a couple thousand employees. And I think those, having a strategy around each of these, I think is key and crucial, but some of the biggest bang for your buck will be in those 200 to 300 or 1,000 person employers that are trying to do work in community. And for them, more so than like a Deloitte or well, AOL is very much a community, but let's say like a Deloitte or some of these other professional services firms that may have an office there. These people really are, their employees, their work, everything is in that community, and so you really want to be able to leverage that work that they're doing. That happens as well with the larger employers. They're wanting to impact community, so from that same perspective, they see themselves as part of that community. So from their perspective, the other piece that I would say, look at the retailers, those that may be part of a larger chain, but really sort of see themselves in that community because they really are a mid or small-sized business doing that work. And oftentimes they have the benefit of being part of a national strategy. So whether it's a CVS, a grocery store, a Target, a movie theater, they definitely have a Starbucks. They have that work, that strategy from a corporate social responsibility perspective that ties all of their work together, but they still wanting to get engaged in that local level. So the benefit there is you can do a bit of research around the work that they do at a national basis from the reports and research that they do, and then go frame it for that local affiliate or that local store at a local basis. But I would say you want to do the same thing, and it may be much more personal on your mid and small sized businesses that are not part of a national chain or organization.
Thanks, John Anthony. Another question that kind of asks a little bit more about your expertise. Having spent so much time with KPMG and on the corporate side, when you left that realm and kind of moved over to the nonprofit sector, what were some of the major eye-openers and things you would wish you'd understood better about the nonprofit sector and kind of that surprised you now that you're on the other side of the relationship, and kind of how could nonprofits better communicate those things about themselves to the corporate world?
One thing that you constantly hear, at least from the corporate side, is, oh, we can go in and save nonprofits. And one thing that I think running a department from and you'll hear this from whether you're running a $3 billion business side of an organization, or you've got $1 million budget running, volunteerism, or running, the training and development department. You always, you're given a budget every year of so much money, and you always want to at least meet that budget, if not just go a smidge over, so next year's budget line doesn't ding you and take away some of your money. At a nonprofit, if you don't make your budget line, oh, thank goodness, because we really already tapped to not have that level of money anyways. And so the thought of thinking of going over a little bit of budget in a nonprofit, if you go over a little bit of budget, you actually are you're now in the red, and you necessarily cannot do that. And so the efficiencies that I think oftentimes happen within a nonprofit are not as acknowledged as well from a business perspective. I think a lot of nonprofits run extremely efficiently on a small resource, a small staff, with a very committed, mission-driven organization. And so I think having that conversation, and so that's, having worked with so many nonprofits, I think that's something that I have known, but being back in the nonprofit sector, I think was key for me to sort of see that again, of how committed people are in the work that they do, and how resource-driven, and to ensure that the most work can get done with the least amount of resources at the best possible level. And so utilizing that as a great opportunity. One thing that I think we've seen in a lot of reports that have come out, I think from Pfizer, from Deloitte, and others, is the fact that nonprofits still can definitely use a huge amount of capacity that they may not be able to bring in because they're not necessarily funded. And so oftentimes we hear, oh, we don't want any monies from our grants to go to support the administration of the work. Well, if you don't have any support of the administration, it's like selling to a client and saying, okay, well, we're only going to pay for the cost of the actual piece of whatever I just bought from you, but not the actual work that took to make that piece, so all the manufacturing, all the other things, as well as the the store manager, we're not going to pay for that, which from a business perspective it would be a little crazy. Of course, we got to pay for all the different pieces. The management of the program, the projects themselves are key, and so I think that's some of the learnings that I've sort of come up with since my recent transition back into the nonprofit sector.
Great. And we have one last question.
John Anthony, this is Abby from VolunteerMatch. Another question that came to mind, or just kind of spinning off the last conversation just now. In your eyes, what are the top 3 most important qualities a nonprofit should look for when deciding to partner with corporate businesses?
The 3 most important qualities. I would say leadership, that in the space. You want key, engaged leaders that are committed to the work, to really sort of understand and really be willing to learn. And so a lot of that, it may take a bit of work in developing a business case of why they should care. But once you've done that and you have that aha moment from a business leader, I think those are some of the best and most keen champions of your work, whether you're doing work in healthcare, whether you're trying to work with youth and education, or whether you're saving the environment. I think those any of any of those pieces I think are crucial. So I think having quality leadership, knowing that there is a structure in place or somebody in place that would help sort of facilitate the management of an organization. Having a leader, I think, is wonderful and does drive a lot of the work. But there is somebody that actually does the work. And so having somebody in place that can be the person that the nonprofit calls, that they would actually pick up the phone and say, okay, so what is it that we need to do next? So that person, having that key person that either understands the business, understands the partnership, understands the work that's been doing. Now, for smaller and mid-sized businesses, that person can be the same person. But when you start getting to larger 100-person organizations, 1,000, 20,000-person organizations, that sort of key person, oftentimes it could be the volunteer, coordinator, manager, director within the business. So that piece. And then finally.
Great, thank you again. Oh, John Anthony, did I cut you off?
No, we're fine. If it comes to me, I'll make sure to. But I think those two are some of the two key pieces that from finding a quality organization. And I would say the last piece is a willingness to really be part of the community in which they're working. So they may want to make sure that they want to be engaged. Some are going to be like, hey, we're here to sell whatever product we have, or we're here, our office just happens to be here, and we're on the 3rd floor of this office building. But if you have somebody that's, we're looking at the employees in our marketplace, we want to make sure that they are happy as they come in. We want to make sure that we impact the employees. The community in which our office, our building, our business sits is key to us. That engagement in community from a business perspective, I think, is important.
Wonderful. So as we're coming to the end of the hour, I wanted to thank you very much, John Anthony, for speaking with us, and let the audience know that if they had questions that weren't answered, I can connect you by email, and as you can see on the screen are his contact information. For those of you on the call, if you'd like to stay informed and continue to get updates on our next webinars, definitely check out our blog, and you can sign up for the newsletter. And the next one coming up is in May, on May 19th, with Farron Levy, President of True Impact, talking about measuring the value of corporate volunteerism. So thank you again, John Anthony, and everyone for participating today. And the presentation will be sent out after, and a recording will be on our YouTube channel. Thank you. Have a good afternoon.
Thank you.